shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. And thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Okay? It's 1 for 10. Not bad.
Jimmy Kimmel poking a little fun at Donald Trump for his support for a new law in Louisiana that requires the 10 Commandments to be posted in every public classroom in the state. Trump defending the law on Truth Social, posting, quote, "This may be, in fact, the first major step in the revival of religion," he says, which is desperately needed in our country. Louisiana Republican Governor Jeff Landry agrees, pushing back on criticism of the law today.
I didn't know that it was so vile to obey the 10 Commandments. I think that speaks volumes about how eroded this country has become. I mean, look, this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and every time we steer away from that, we have problems in our nation.
The ACLU is blocking or suing to block the law. The Supreme Court has stopped Kentucky, we should know, from implementing a similar law twice, but more states could follow in Louisiana's footsteps. Tonight, the second most powerful politician in Texas is vowing to push for a bill requiring the 10 Commandments in schools there. The issue has long been a rallying cry for people on the religious right, and my next guest should know. Bradley Onishi served as an evangelical minister for 7 years and considered himself a Christian nationalist before leaving the church to study religion and extremism. He's the author of Preparing for War, The Extremist History of White Christian Nationalism and What Comes Next. Bradley, I'm on his title, but a very important subject. You've been inside the Christian nationalist movement. What do you make of this new 10 Commandments law?
Well, this is not something new, and it's not happening by accident. The call to restore the country to its covenant with God has been a rallying cry among Christian nationalists going back to the 1960s when they believed the country was stolen from them. This is why so many Christian nationalists have found a home in the MAGA movement, because the nostalgia politics at play in Donald Trump's campaigns fits nicely into a vision of the country that says, we once were great, but we departed from God's vision, and now we're lost.
And for Bradley, today in Washington, Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley spoke at the Faith and Freedom Coalition Conference and openly called for more religion in government and schools. Let's listen.
We don't need less Christian influence in our society. We don't need less Christian witness in our society. We need more. In every part of government, in every part of society. You know what we ought to do? We ought to take the pride flag out of schools and put the Bible back in.
Is that just rhetoric?
It's not just rhetoric, and we know that. And I think the 10 Commandments bill is a really good example. This didn't happen by accident. This is a part of a coordinated effort by Christian nationalist organizations that want to impose Christianity on all of American society. The 10 Commandments bill came from a group called Project Blitz, which represents about 40 different Christian nationalist organizations, and they work with state legislatures every year. They pre-write bills in the hope that they'll be sponsored and passed into law. Now, they only usually have a few victories per year, but when they have a signature one, like the 10 Commandments bill here in Louisiana, it makes them think all that hard work is worth it. It also signals something that I think we have to be aware of when it comes to Senator Hawley's comments and others who are talking about this across the country. They're willing to play the long game. They're willing to keep putting forth bills, having most of them not pass, but warming up our society, continuing to warm the waters of American culture to the point that we will eventually get to a boiling and have a fully fledged Christian national society where one view of faith is imposed on the rest of us.
Well, and, this 10 Commandments law has me thinking, I mean, isn't this kind of a slam dunk Supreme Court case if and when it gets to the Supreme Court, the Establishment Clause of the Constitution says you cannot have, you have to have a separation between church and state. I mean, that's just sort of like, high school government 101. Do you not see it that way? Is it possible, as the Supreme Court trends in a harder, more conservative, right-wing direction, that perhaps that may be overlooked? I can't imagine that happening, but what do you think?
A law like this was struck down in 1980, and one would expect this one to be struck down now. I'll say two things here, though. We have a court that is full of surprises. Over the last month, I think we've seen that every time we've heard something new about Justice Alito and the flags flying over his house, not to mention some of the rulings that have come down over the last couple of terms. So it's a gambit at the court right now, and I don't think anyone knows exactly what will happen. But I think there's a larger lesson here, too, which is to say, if this is struck down, it just gives Senator Hawley and Governor Landry and others around the country more fuel to the fire to play the victim. To say, well, look at this. Look at those who would throw God out continually from our society. Those are the ones who hate America. Those are the ones who are against American flourishing. I can't believe that they would stand up here and say that God's no longer allowed in the United States. It's a way to play the victim, to mobilize a base, and to divide the country in a us versus them kind of way.
All right, Bradley Onishi, thanks very much for your time. A lot of great thoughts there. Love to have you come back and talk about this further. Really important topic. Appreciate the time tonight.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it.